Alright, so we are in Algebra 1. Today's date is Monday, October 14th, 2019. We're talking about intercepts from both graphs and equations. Tomorrow will be intercepts from a table. Who can read our objective today? Kira was first.
Find X and Y intercepts from graphs and equations.
There it is. So since we're finding X and Y intercepts, it would help to know what those things are. So an X-intercept is where the function crosses the what axis with a quiet raised hand. What is your guess here, Wyatt?
The x-axis.
It is indeed the x-axis. Nice and straightforward there. Thank you, Wyatt. You can come in and turn your card. And Charles, what is the next one?
Y-axis.
The y-axis. Usually I have my axes labeled. You can just pass it around too if you don't want to get all the way up, but I appreciate you guys getting up as well. So, of course, the y-axis is the one that runs up and down. The x-axis runs left and right. So wherever I cross the x-axis, that will be my x-intercept. Wherever I cross the y-axis, that will be my y-intercept. And it helps to know how to do coordinate pairs. So who wants to do example 1 for us? What is the x-intercept? You need two numbers for me. You need the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate. Again, this is the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate. Eamon? Eamon, go for it.
The x-intercept is -6, 0.
Ooh, careful. I think you almost had. I think it's this one right here.
Oh, -5.
There it is. -5, 0. Everyone write it down. -5, 0. Thank you, Eamon. And what about the y-intercept? I have Charles for backup. Ulysses with this card.
0, 2.
0, 2. There it is. Nice and easy. Question, Esha.
So why wouldn't it be y7 because it's crossing the y-axis? The line is 2, y2.
So 2 is the y-coordinate that it passes through the y-axis. So if I zoom in here, you can see that 2 is where it crosses.
So we wouldn't count that. It would just be 0.
Because the X is 0.
So yeah, the x-coordinate, how far did I move to the left and right? Well, I haven't moved left or right. So 0 for the left and right movement, and I went up 2. So that's why this is 2 here. And then for the x-intercept, how much did I move left? Well, I moved left 5, so -5. And then how much did I move up or down? I didn't move up and down. I stayed on the x-axis, so that's why I have a 0 here. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. If not, you can always ask it a different way. Let's zoom back in here to fit with. Yeah, other questions on example 1 before we move on to we're doing example number 2 after I talk about a quick rule. All right, so our rule of thumb. What do you notice is always a number when I'm talking about the x-intercept? What is always a certain number? So I'm going to fill in over here first. What is always a certain number? Esha.
Is it 0?
So what is always 0? Yeah. When I'm talking about an x-intercept, and you can look back at the previous example, was it the x-coordinate or the y-coordinate that was 0? Esha.
Oh, it was the y.
It was the y-coordinate, yeah. Which means if I come over here to fill in my rule, make sure that this y is always 0, and that this, we don't know. I'm going to do an empty box. It could be whatever I want.
Or you could just put the x.
Or you could just put x, yeah. However you guys want to do the notes, just make it make sense to you. What about for the y-intercept? What is always 0 for the y-intercept? Larissa? X is always 0, yes. Which means if I come down here to my notes, I'm going to say, yes, well, this x-coordinate right here has to be 0, and I don't know it goes there. It could be whatever number it passes through in terms of its axis. Cool. So this rule is going to be super important when you get to equations and tables. The y is always 0 when I'm talking about the x-intercept, the y-intercept, the x is always 0. You always think about the opposite, and that thing is always 0 for intercepts. So if I come down here to example number 2, determine the intercepts of the line, and I have this equation here. This is a linear equation, and I know that because I have a coefficient of 1 and a coefficient of 1. Not too important yet until we hit quadratics and stuff like that. But how do I figure out what the x-intercept is for this equation? What do I have to do? Charles, talk to me.
Would it be 4 for the X-intercept?
How'd you get 4?
Well, because it's 4 times X.
That's a good guess.
I was wondering if that would work.
You're not quite correct. So you still get your 50x speed, but that's not how it works. You can, yeah, Wyatt?
You want to subtract 1 from both sides.
You are eventually going to want to subtract 1 from both sides to try to simplify. We can do that right now. It's kind of the second step, but we can do it first. So if we subtract 1 from both sides, minus 1, then I get the equation 4x is equal to negative 2y plus 5. But I still have two variables, which is kind of confusing. So how do I get an x-intercept? And you guys need to use this information that you just used right here. You're somehow going to substitute a number in for a variable. Does anyone have an idea what number you could substitute in for a variable? Larissa?
Would you do 0 for x?
You would put 0 for a variable, but not x. For the x-intercept, what is always 0?
So you would do 0 for y to get rid of decimals.
There it is. All right, so y is always 0 for an x-intercept. Because I'm looking for an x-intercept, I'm going to make my y 0. So here I go. My y is going to be 0, so this y right here, I'm going to change and substitute it for 0, and my new equation is 4x is equal to negative 2 times 0 plus 5. I have substituted I've substituted 0 for y because I know that the y coordinate is always 0 for an x-intercept. Usually you do that first, but then you'll have to subtract 1 from both sides anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And then from here, I need to solve. Can someone solve this entire thing for us? You're going to have to multiply negative 2 times 0 and then do something to both sides to isolate for x, Kira.
So negative 2 times 0 is 0.
Okay, so I'm just going to cross it off. It's gone.
0 plus, then you just have 5 equals 4x.
Okay,
And then you can divide both sides by 4.
and you get x is equal to?
X equals 5 4.
There it is, 5/4. Thank you, Kira. Can someone tell me how to write my answer now? What do I write in here? Charles?
5 over 4, comma 0.
There it is. That is how you find an x-intercept. Ask me questions. We're going to move on to the y-intercept in a sec. Wyatt?
Can I solve the Y-intercept?
That is a question. But we'll take a break for now, make sure everyone can digest the math. No questions, no questions. All right, so what am I going to do for my first step to find the y-intercept? Does anyone still have their card? Jade?
We'll write out the problem. And then get negative 2y left, so subtract 6 on both sides.
Okay, so if I subtract 6 on both sides, I'm left with 4x, and then what's going to be over here on the left-hand side? Minus 5 is equal to negative 2y. We'll take it. Yeah, thank you. What is our next step? Ulysses.
Wait, make x 0.
Yes, y. You're correct, but why?
Because the Y-intercept, and whenever the Y-intercept, x is always 0.
There it is, yeah. So we're substituting 0 in for x, so I have 4 times 0 minus 5 is equal to negative 2y.
Wait,
So- Yes, question.
did we just take the 6 out?
So Jade's first step was to subtract 6 from both sides, so
Okay.
that 6 went away, and then I didn't show my work, so that's why it's probably confusing. 1 minus 6 is negative 5, so that's how I got that negative 5.
It was plus a negative 5 because it's plus 1, 4x plus 1 minus 6 is 4x plus negative 5.
So you can think of it as 4x plus negative 5 or 4x minus 5. Both of them are the same answers.
Oh, I see.
All right. So, and then we plug in 0 because it's a plug in 0 for x, as Ulysses said, because y-intercepts have an x that is always 0. So our x right here changed to a 0. And now I need someone to solve for y. Who can do that for me? Charles?
You would divide negative 2 on both sides and you would get negative 5 over negative 2, or that would also be 5 over 2.
There it is. I'll pause here to make sure everyone can follow the work, and then I'm going to ask for another volunteer to tell me how to write my answer. But for now, make sure you understand each of the steps. We are trying to isolate for y. We plugged in 0 for x because it's a y-intercept. We solved for y. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. And then Wyatt, how do we write our final answer?
0, comma 5 halves, and that means that the x coordinate is 0 and the y coordinate is 5 halves.
There it is. Yeah, thank you. Any questions on example number 2? All right, so coming down here, you guys have, oh man, a teacher error. All right, Ulysses, please give everyone 70 XP. This should be example number 3. I don't know why that did not get changed. You guys are going to be working on example number 3. Please cross off that 2, make it a 3. Work on example number 3 by yourselves, and I guess with people on the left and right of you if you need help. Make sure to log the help to Ulysses. And then, yeah, I'll be coming around the room and checking you guys off.
This is Esha filling in for Mr. Sindel. Okay, I'm just going to write the problem out.
I actually have one of that stuff. Is it like this kind of? Check this out. I think I found it too. Check this out. Level 10, remember that? Level 17.
So you have X and Y. So this is 6 and this is 0. And now this is our equation.
No,
Hold on.
I'm waiting to see what this looks like. So safe.
So X, Y, X is 0 and Y is -4.